But parents will know when their children are upset, as compared to maybe, 20, 30 years ago, where you would be upset with your parent, but dare you even disagree, dare you even show that publicly. With Shah, it was interesting that time when Grace stormed the press statement. There were many questions. Like, how did she get up there to the 4th floor? How did she pass security?
Security breach and all that.
Many questions. That is a screaming red flag of protocol overlaps, system failure. He is still stuck on politicking the way politics was done in the 90s. I think also maybe because of that, he can't understand the criticisms. Because in the 90s, to heckle, my goodness, people were not heckling. The way people, me, I'm a parent. So the way you want to go somewhere and you say, "Hiya, go grab your shoes," and then you disappear. Try and do that at least 4 times with your child. It will get to a point they'll be like, "No, utaenda." They will learn your method. So it will get to a point where they refuse, or they'll even hold you to make sure as they get their shoes, they can see you. They're not going to fall for it every time. And that's what's happening here. The Kenyan people are saying, we're not going to fall for it every time. So even though he could be saying the truth, it's going to be hard for people to believe.
And you're just in time for Richard Mwenja exclusive. The month is February, the Overload 2025. We continue unpacking conversations that are shaping Kenya's political and governance landscape. And yet again, I have one of your favorite thought leaders. She is the executive director of Siasa Place. You know her. She's a woman of many fasts. Nerima Owako is here with us today to help me bring the day's conversation home. I'm Richard Mwenja. Welcome to the conversation. How about now I bring to your screens Nerima Owako. Nerima, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
You're well?
Morning. I am.
All right, Nerima. Today I want us to have a conversation about probably how the administration of today is handling a section of the society with alternative views about their agenda, and even how their progress is this far with regards to implementing that which they promised the electorate during the campaign trails and even thereafter, after they came into office. But let's begin with the case of Isiolo, or even the Northern Frontier District at large. Very recently, we saw the president tour that region for development tour. But even while at it, we still saw him go bare knuckles on critics of his administration. A case in point is when he questioned even the academic credibility of those who are critiquing him, asking them that you guys are not educated as I am. So please tone down, put your criticism based on facts and not just really because of the spirit of opposing everything. But even, let's look at it from this perspective. Do you think the president is justified to question the academic credibility of those who are critiquing him?
I do not. I believe that the president is a man of the people, so he's definitely going to receive a lot of opinions and criticisms from the public. During their campaigning in 2022, the first thing they would do is, meet face-to-face with mama mbogas in the markets, with students, hustlers. And what were they saying? They were saying, we want to hear your opinion. And that's what they were using. They were using their opinions to build the manifestos. So now it has flipped the other way around, now that they're in power. But what we are seeing is the frustrations that he's going through. And I admire other countries where they're able to elect people who are local. You look at councils, even in the UK, or even, Ukraine is an example, the president being a former comedian. That shows you that leadership can come from the average citizen. And leadership is not about academic excellence. I believe it's Albert Einstein who says the standard of intelligence can't be measured. You can't compare a fish to a monkey when the test is to climb a tree. So for me, even in my organization, everyone has an opinion. In fact, most of the time when we do have engagements or meetings, I often speak last because I don't want to influence what people think. And that's how you get true opinion. That's how you also be able to gauge and you meet a compromise. So we're clearly seeing he's struggling with his leadership style. And I believe, there's also the saying, is it better to be loved than feared? I think he has realized he's not being loved at the moment. So he's currently trying to instill fear in the people.
And do you think he'll thrive by invoking fear?
I think he's struggling. There's some fear because people are not, they're still speaking up. Even though we saw people being arrested for making noise or mocking, some people were saying that they were just picked up. They don't even know how they ended up in court. I mean, I was seeing some of those.
But the CS Interior has a different position regarding that matter, and he believes that those who are arrested are suspected drug traffickers, and they're not arrested because they were heckling the president. Do you think there's an odd of truth from the argument from Kipchumba Murkomen regarding the Isiolo arrest of the youths?
But how were they arrested? Weren't they just like picked up? So even drug traffickers, you're telling me, they can be at a market or walking on the streets at the same time and they just targeted it. I mean, even that story logically doesn't make sense to me. If they are drug traffickers, then they would be drug busts. Normally, you catch them by surprise within their own houses or within their places of work. The way they were picked up shows you that they were not all drug traffickers. It just seemed very random and sporadic. It just seemed like a tactic that was visibly done during the day to make sure that people are able to see, and there's this fear that is being cascaded or being pushed toward the public where they're saying, mock me, make fun of me, and you'll be one of these people. And that's what the message was, I believe. Yeah.
But then again, the president, I believe, as the father figure in this country, he has the mandate to instill in himself the requisite capacity to listen. But then again, if you're saying that these youths were arrested because they were heckling the president, does it show that probably we have a president who is suffering from inferiority complex or even an imaginary enemies in the first place?
I find it interesting that we're living in a day and age where heckling can lead to arrest. You can do two things. Either you just reduce on your public appearances and, if it's bothering you so much, and focus on your work, because currently you're not even supposed to be campaigning. Those are public rallies, not even supposed to be. This is the midterm of your position and understanding whether your administration works and measuring how people feel about it. There are a lot of things that are on the way, including another finance bill. So I don't think meeting the public should be top of the agenda right now as frequently as he has been. But it's a sad thing to say because, we're dealing with a generation that is used and brought up in speaking up. These are people who speak up to their parents.
You can't silence the messenger in this case?
No, these are people who will disagree with their parents. They might not tell them to their face. They might be passive-aggressive about it. But parents will know when their children are upset, as compared to maybe, 20, 30 years ago where you would be upset with your parent, but dare you even disagree, dare you even show that publicly.
Welcome to Herencia, the heartland of good living, where you belong. A community with endless possibilities. Your path to discovering a master-planned gated community that matches your ambitions. Get yourself this must-have piece of paradise with state-of-the-art amenities, constant water supply, good security, tarmac roads, and much more. The best part, availability of buy and build financing services. Don't wait. Contact us today or visit our offices for more info. Buy and build your way at Herencia, the heartland of good living.
It's a complete mismatch of culture. We're also seeing, young people who are adults. I mean, we're talking about people who, some of them, they're in their late 20s. They're in their 30s. Some of them are parents of other kids. So, it's like you're telling someone because they're below the age of 35 that they're not supposed to have an opinion. I think heckling, you should be allowed to heckle if you're upset about a situation, as long as you're not harming anybody physically, then I don't see what the challenge is.
It makes sense, Nirima, but let's circle back to probably the livestock vaccination program, which has been highly critiqued by many people out here. And from the government, they believe that they have a right to push down the throats of Kenyan every agenda that they seek to implement. But then again, is it because probably they underrate public intelligence, that probably they see these Gen Zs are not educated enough or they're not awake enough to understand what we are saying? Are they underrating that social and public intelligence?
Well, they actually started to backstep on that statement because the ministry started to say, well, we're not going to force everybody to go through this vaccination if they have livestock. It's a choice. But initially, the lingo was, we are going to force this vaccination. And so when they saw the public, back and uproar, that's when they said, no, it's not necessary for us to inject. But even though there's some situations where I've heard about the vaccine and there are some people who are saying it's actually not a bad thing, I think that there's just a huge challenge of miscommunication with his administration. I think that they struggle to communicate what they're doing. We've seen that even in instances where there was a point up to almost 10 ministries were responding to a statement. We see that. And I think that's where the challenge is, where you are trying to communicate what you're working on, but the way it's being said, you know, my sister sometimes she says, you know, it's not about what you say, it's how you say it. And I think our president struggles with how he says things. It's not necessarily what he says.
So even despite having a robust communication team, in the sense that almost every ministry has an extensive communications team, you get to the list from State House or even the office of the Deputy President, and you look at those staff under communications line, an entire list. So then again, where is the missing link? You have enough people to work at the communication side, but you've said they are not communicating well enough. What's the missing link?
I think there are too many kitchens. When you have too many people having access to information, there are too many streams of power. And that's the challenge, because and we're also seeing it also with our security. There was a time that there was a report that was done that said that there's another security mechanism that's actually doing these abductions and questioning whether it's being controlled by the president, and some people saying that it is. And so when you have institutions that are put in place and then you have the creation of parallel institutions to do the same tasks, that's the confusion. So you have people who they should be the direct link to the president, but they are not receiving the direct information from the president. He would have other mechanisms that have access to that information, almost like a circle, almost like he's in a fishbowl. And that's what's creating this also chaotic mess that we see. And even when you think about the situation with Shah, it was interesting that time when Grace stormed the press statement. There were many questions. Like, how did she get up there to the 4th floor? How did she pass security?
Security breach and all that.
Many questions. That is a screaming red flag of protocol overlaps, system failure. Because there's one thing that government loves is protocol. I mean, they will follow system to a T. And so when you have things like that happening sporadically, it shows you that there's a break in the system. That, for me, was the number one sign that something is off within the ministries. Yeah.
A red flag indeed.
Red.
Nerima, the president has actually diagnosed Kenya's problem to be the constant politicking from our leaders, that someone is ushered into office today and the day after they have started premature campaigns for the next election cycle. And you'd expect that his team is behaving right with regards to that particular concern. But when the president says that even for his own tours, they are development tours and not premature campaigns, are you going to buy that argument? Or is literally preaching water, but on the other side, drinking wine?
I worry about the development tours because so much has happened within the last 2 weeks. Even when we talk about, you know, USAID, we talk about international funding, it has put countries in a gridlock. You're seeing what's happening with South Africa. I mean, that situation is a bit different because of Elon Musk and Trump and them cutting US aid to South Africa. But South Africa saying, we're also going to cut business and with exports with the US. And that's a lot of business that's going down the drain. And the way the cycle of the economy works, even for our own country, that will have a huge impact on our development. And I don't think that even the president's attention is heavily enough on that, because even when you look at his agenda, which was heavily economic, a lot of the resource he's been receiving from international entities, you know, from even missions from different countries, that means that that funding pool is shrinking. And so even when you talk about development tours, the development tours shouldn't even be to the Kenyan people. He needs to be strategizing in terms of his own roadmap. It has changed. It changed 2 weeks ago. And so as he's doing all this gallivanting, it's expensive. Even the kind of development he's talking about, it takes years to do. When you talk about housing, it takes time to build those houses, those resources that you need for those houses.
Or say barabara kutoka Mandera hadi Nairobi. Ya kupita Modogashe.
Imagine.
I actually want to question something here, Nerima. You say that the president is hijacking Kenya's development plan by putting their politics and claiming that those are not premature campaigns. But then again, is the president actually given the mandate to declare roadside development on top of a sunroof and say, I'm going to bring a road to this place, I'm going to sink a dam here and there? We have that in, yes, in the strategy of the National Treasury and Ministry of Economic Planning. Should the president be the mouthpiece of such, or even the one dishing out those development?
No, he shouldn't. And with our new, or it's not new anymore, with our constitution, when we have devolution, there are certain arms of government that are to deal with that. That's the reason that we have the county, the national assemblies, we have the executive. There are roles that to be played. But when we see those roadside shows, what we're seeing is almost going back to the federal system, where all resources are constantly being controlled at the capital, and he decides where development happens. That's what we're seeing. But that's not supposed to be. So it's almost like we're being taken back in time politically, yet devolution should have the right representatives up front to be able to tell us about these roads, because you know, under roads there are those within the county, and then there are the roads that are under the national. Yeah, so it shouldn't be him. It shouldn't be him, because under the county it's the governors. So I think that he is still stuck on politicking the way politics was done in the 90s. I think also maybe because of that, he can't understand the criticisms, because in the 90s to heckle, my goodness, people were not heckling. But also in the 90s, people were politicking in funerals and churches. Today, you are not so sure if you can. There are some people who will stop you. They'll tell you, hiyo maneno ya siasa peleke nyumbani, ama hapo nje, usilete hapa. Or there are some who occupied churches. They told some politicians they were returning money, and even telling some politicians, don't come to the pulpit, don't come to the podium. It is a different time. It's a different time, but he's using the same tactics. So he will have to change tactics.
He'll have to change tactics. Nerima, there's something I want to understand here. And still, if we go back to the Isiolo incident, what the youths were chanting were that you are lying. Yes, you are promising those that, but we know all that is hot air, empty talk. Why is there a widening trust deficit when it comes to handling promises from this administration by the day? Is it that people are negative about government progress with regards to implementing the agenda, or it's pure lies? A culture of elevated falsehoods still going on by the day?
I like what you've said, a culture of elevated falsehoods. And it's one of those things where you've been promised so many things, you know. The story of the boy who cried wolf, you know. You're constantly saying there's a wolf, there's a wolf, there's a wolf. First you make people panic, they're like there's a wolf, so you start preparing, and then there's no wolf. So when there is an actual wolf, the story ends that nobody believed the boy. And that's where we are. So where the promises have been so frequent, so often, that even people started doing, you know, trackers on how many promises has the president made. That now, when he makes promises or says things, you're just like, it's a lie, because you've just had it often. You've just had it too much. So that's why I think, you know, the tactic has to move toward just action. It has to move toward action. Because even if you were to bring it to your most basic of family units, even your household, right? You know, the way people, me, I'm a parent. So the way you want to go somewhere and you say, hiya, go grab your shoes, and then you disappear. Try and do that at least 4 times with your child. It will get to a point they'll be like, no, you know, utaenda. They will learn your method. So it will get to a point where they refuse, or they'll even hold you to make sure as they get their shoes, they can see you. They're not going to fall for it every time. And that's what's happening here. The Kenyan people are saying, we're not going to fall for it every time. So even though he could be saying the truth, it's going to be hard for people to believe.
It too has an expiry date.
Yes.
And when that time comes, do you see something morphing into a bigger revolution than that which we saw last year, June? Absolutely,
because, and maybe that's what's making me nervous about this weekend. Because,
oh, really?
Yeah, because you know, after June, and you know, it was chaotic and tense, and then broad-based came in and sort of confused the situation. Things were still simmering, but not visibly. So if we were to get to another moment like that, where there's another pop-up or an issue like that, then what becomes the plan? Because now you have played your wild card. What's left? What's left? Like, if people come out to the streets again, as loudly, as visibly, as largely, then who will calm them down? Because now you have everybody who could have. They're all on that side.
Even the church.
Yeah, they're there. Who can? So I feel for me, his wild card has been played. Yeah. And so that's why, you know, he's grappling with, let's stretch this out to 2027. Let me just make sure I make it to 2027. And he's trying to get those blocks that normally don't participate, or they're the swing, or they're the ones that you can persuade. So trying to get Western, trying to get the Northern frontier, just to create this block. I think when he looks at the game, that's his only card left.
The only card left.
That's the only card left. But the problem with that card, we have to get to an election. So if a pop-up happens tomorrow, you can't play that card. Yeah, maybe that's what is making me nervous. Because even, it does.
Know that you're becoming a prophet of doom here. And instilling fear of what lies ahead tomorrow.
No, I'm not a prophet of doom. I'm just realizing that the political landscape is changing fast. And, you know, even if Rao is to get AU and ODM is left, there's going to be a lot of changes within ODM itself. And, you know, some might leave ODM because of that and finding a new home. And so there's just a lot of movement that will occur over the next few weeks.
So Nerima, you're somewhat signaling that we could be looking at a case of a monkey that is destined to die. And on that material day, it will find all trees slippery. That is the case for President Ruto, if he doesn't change tack.
It's looking like, because even when you're seeing that battle of majority whip, minority whip, you can see the tension. It's so palpable. And, you know, people are waiting for direction. I think the only thing keeping this sort of relationship was they're supporting Baba with AU. So now when AU is finished and the support is done, what happens to our partnership? I think those are the questions that are going to be coming to the fore over the weekend. Yeah.
All right, there you have it, Nerima. Allow me to wrap the conversation at that. We're going to flip the entire agenda into our next conversation about the independence of Parliament of the day and also what lies ahead with regards to composition of the IEBC and also what Kenyans expect from that particular electoral body and also from the president in the balance of the time. Nerima, I understand that the People Dialogue Festival is coming up in March.
Yes, it is.
Please send out an invitation to many who would wish to be part of it.
Yes, so it's the first week of March. It's going to be at Uhuru Park. It's open to the public, and it's going to be days of engaging on politics, governance, climate action, justice, everything, and even voter registration and IDs is also going to be a hot topic at the PDF.
So they're all invited, free of charge?
They're all
free
invited,
entry?
It's free of charge. People's Dialogue Festival at Uhuru Park, yes.
Someone could be asking, kuna drinks?
Gioni. There's actually concerts. Yeah, it's the whole day. It starts at like 8 a.m. I think it's March 5th to the 7th, but I'll have to confirm. March 5th to the 7th.
All right.
Yeah.
Please join Nerima Wako and his team at and her team at the People's Dialogue Festival, and get also to be acquainted with what you should know as a taxpayer in this country, as a voter in this country, and also as a child of the universe. We wait to see you on our next conversation. Thank you so much for slating time, Nerima Wako. We don't take this for granted. And thank you so much for your incredible insights.
Thank you.
Much as you diagnosed our president on the last show to be suffering from the helicopter mom syndrome.
You know, a lot of people messaged me and they're like, is that a real thing? I was like, Google, you know, it's a real thing.
Oh, really?
Yes. I didn't make it up. It's real. It's a real thing.
Aren't you afraid that they're going to silence you at some point? Because you've talked about a government which is not having the fortitude to handle criticism.
Yeah. No, I'm not afraid. Because if I keep silent, then what will my son say?
Oh, wow. How noble of Nerima. Until you get to do this again, enjoy the rest of your viewing. Up next is Richard Mwenja exclusive with Nerima Wako Ojiwo.
Hi there. My name is Mwenja, property consultant at 1442 Kusini. We are a new project coming up in South B, Sana area. We are close to Mombasa Road, about 700 meters to Mombasa Road. We also have a bunch of amenities around us, schools, hospitals, mosques, churches, and Capital Center is only a stone throws away. I will want to tell you about our one bedroom, which is going for 5.45 million, and our two bedroom going for 7.45 million shillings. Our two bedroom is a master and suite, and all our units feature Adobe areas.